Welcome to the American Operator Podcast, where small businesses are the heartbeat of America. I'm Joseph Cabrera, and we dive into the stories of owners and operators who build and keep our communities thriving. Whether you're new to business or already in the trenches, we'll share the hard-earned wisdom, triumphs, and challenges with running a business in this great country. Let's get to work. All right, team, welcome back. I'm here with Travis McAshan. I would call him an Austin staple, but definitely a Texas guy. Probably had a couple records, I think, on the track at one point in time, and so he's quite the dude to be able to talk with today, man. So good to have you.
I'm pleased to be here. It's an honor.
Well, I'll tell you, man, one of the things that I know we basically had an entire podcast episode before we just jumped live on these mics, right, which is great. So I was like, all right, we got to get some of this stuff in here. But one of the things that I want to share with the audience first is a little bit about your background. I founded a company called Glide Design. And when you think of epic experiences, it is not only visually and from an audio perspective, really engaging, but also in this world of like, you have helped some of the biggest brands from the Circuit of the Americas there in the F1 track all the way to, is Austin FC one of your folks too?
Yeah. Multiple, actually. We're on our third professional soccer team now. It's
Are you?
Cool. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, so like anybody who really wants to make sure they arrive to the world in a way that they know kind of what their company and tribe stands for, they seem to find you. Can you just give folks a quick snippet on like, how did that idea of this company come to be?
Wow. So much to say on that. To create a concise version, I just honestly was sick of having a boss and left to start my own company. And I think my passion was just creativity and design. And at the time, the internet was this huge wave, right? You have kind of the internet and then mobile and now AI, these like giant kind of general purpose technologies that changed the world. And, at the time that I started Glide, kind of early 2000, the wave was internet. And so there was this digital transformation occurring in all of these organizations were either getting websites for the first time or improving their websites. And so it was just a great place to be. And then living in Austin, Texas is also a benefit and just the tide that lifts all boats. And so kind of the place that came from was just a place of a passion for design, a passion for usability. I got my degree in architecture in college. And so I've always just traveled the world through the lens of usability. I mean, when I'm driving down the road and I look at a billboard and there's like too many words, I'm just like, who designed that? They should be fired, or a doorknob that's turned the wrong way. And so I just take that to the digital space. And so our deepest passion is really not just to design things that look great, but they work great. One of my favorite quotes is, don't make something unless it is both necessary and useful. But if it is both necessary and useful, don't hesitate to make it beautiful. And so to us, we have this, I was on a call pretty early in the history of my company with a really great client. They're now a multi-billion-dollar organization. We were with them when they were like 15 million. And at the time, for us, it would have been one of our biggest clients. And the guy, the marketing leader on the other side of the call, he's like, hey man, look, it's down to you and one other organization. You have 30 seconds. Why should I choose your company? And so like the pressure's on, like what am I going to say in this moment? And your kind of life flashes before your eyes. And the first words out of my mouth were beauty and results. And so, I kind of described what that meant in a 30-second period, and just this concept of beauty being far more than just what things look like or the presentational value of it, but the simplicity, the clarity, the brevity, the humanity, everything that creates a delightful experience. Because, our avenue to affect impact in marketing was through this website project, which then turned into a longer engagement. And so that's what I always tell people. We're a beauty and results company, So we think that Jeff Bezos, one time somebody asked him, how can you be so right? How can you make all of these great decisions? And by the way, he hasn't. Look at the Fire Phone, right? Like that was like a $500 million write-off. But like he's made a lot of great decisions, And in this interview, somebody asked him that question and he said, I don't know what people want in 10 years, but they're going to want it cheaper and they're going to want it faster. So I build toward that. And my mind was blown, when he answered that question, because I was just like, wow, what a great long-term strategy, And so I said, well, what do people want in our industry in 10 years? It's not cheaper. People are willing to spend more money on something that looks great and works great. So that's where I came to this concept of beauty and results. Like most marketing leaders, most organizations want to present themselves well in the marketplace. They want to look amazing. They want to look like $1,000,000. They want to have a great brand experience, but that has to turn into action. Like the people that they're trying to reach in their marketing, they need to do something. And so that's where the results come in. And so we're a beauty and results company. That's it.
It's a really awesome way of capturing what y'all do. I think if y'all interact with any of the things that y'all have built, and I've been fortunate to meet the teammates that you have that kind of push that football every single day across the line. You can tell they live and breathe it. And there's something about the culture that you've built also on that team and in that company. That's something really that one day hopefully somebody will write a book on. I'm curious, Travis, like as long as I've known you, you've always been a student of the craft, right? You're always studying it. You're always figuring out how to make it better. Is that Travis, the architect, engineer, the tinkerer? Is that someone who gave you that kind of insight? Like, where did that idea come from that the ones and zeros and making sure the financial models isn't the only important thing, but also making sure that I'm the very best person, leader, and studied in it? It just seems like every time I'm talking to you, you got a new book or a new idea.
Oh my gosh, yes. Where does this come from? I think that you have these, you look at the world. Everybody has a lens upon which they look at the world. And I realized that one of my lenses is just the lens of continuous improvement. And many years ago, I went through an exercise of just identifying, what were the moments in my life where I was the most proud, where I felt the most achievement, the most success and fulfillment. And I identified, probably 15 or 20 different kind of experiences up to that point. This is back in 2015. And then part of the exercise was like, what were the contributing factors to those experiences? And about 5 each. Now I have 75 different contributing factors to the most fulfilling, successful, achieving, events in my life. And then I just kind of made it almost like a word cloud, of like, okay, what are all of how do I triangulate? What are the commonalities between these 75 different contributing factors? And it ultimately arrived in what my core values were. And one of those was just this deep desire for continuous improvement. So I think it's just something that's been in me for a long time. And so you kind of pair continuous improvement with being intensely goal driven, which a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders are. And so it's like, okay, I have goals that I'm aiming for, and continuous improvement is the best way to get there. It was funny. I've been thinking about this a lot. Man, there's just, my brain races on like, what should I say? Because there's just so much I want to say about this.
Got an encyclopedia of things you can pick from.
But, we have an approach at Glide that is, we call it user-centered. So user-centered in our industry, UCD or human-centered is just this idea of you're going to build something, build it for the people that are going to use it and involve them in the beginning, the middle, and the end of that process. Most people don't do this, in our space or really for most things in general. And when we see that whenever you're using a product that clearly isn't working correctly, same thing with the website, so you can have a website that gets redesigned for a client that has a high stake in getting right, so maybe they're lead generation or it's an e-commerce website and it needs to produce results because it is a contingent part of the business plan. So you redesign the site, everybody high fives, the site is clearly better. We all love it. And then it goes out into the wild and it performs worse, and I think that is because of a lack of user-centered design. And so I've been thinking about this concept of user-centered, and you almost could just boil it down to empathy, and so there's empathy. And then the next thing for me is results, being results oriented, which is really about truth. How do you get to the truth of the matter? And just understanding that, there's current state, where am I now? There's future desired state, where do I want to be? There's the delta, there's the gap between. So what is the truth of that gap? Like, how do I turn that into something that's a plan of action? And then I realized that continuous improvement is, at its essence, like it's determination, it's perseverance. It's like, okay, so I have empathy by understanding who is using my products or what I'm trying to do in life. And then I have the ability to kind of like see the truth. And then through resilience, I will keep going. I will iterate. I won't stop. And we talked about that quote earlier before the podcast. So, I love Brian or John C. Maxwell. He says, a person's success is directly proportional to their perception and response to failure. And so I think if you approach anything, I was like, so I actually posted this to my team on Slack last week. I was like, I honestly think there's no problem in life that can't be overcome with empathy, truth, and just determination, you know? And that can apply to designing a website or running a company or a relationship, you name it. And so it's fun to kind of get down to the essence of things and then build back up from that. And so I think that's the idea of continuous improvement, in my opinion, or this idea you're talking, where kind of like super long-winded answer to your question. But like, I was like, you get down to the essence, like what is the truest essence of what drives this, and then build it back toward, okay, well, how do we apply this to marketing, for a B2B or a nonprofit? And then how can that turn into a repeatable process that we can apply and grow in our learning for each client, each organization, each project, that accrues knowledge so that the next project we have more information to use for that project than the next project. And then we can continue to improve that. So yeah, it's just kind of like an earnest desire to deliver better value over time.
I imagine that a lot of that, you seem so rooted in that, even what you described, like so rooted in that understanding of what it takes to kind of get better. You said something about failure, and it kind of made me smile inside and probably out. I guess we'll see afterwards if I was grinning when you said that. But failure is the unlock, right, for a lot of this. Like, this is actually the real way you get to validate the theory of what it is you're doing. And more likely, do you believe that it's also a place where you get the real data points to then inform you about what to do next?
Yes. And I love that you use the word data point. That's such a great way to think about that. When you think about failure, as long as you don't quit, it's not failure, right? It's an outcome. And outcomes give you information. And information that teaches you, am I moving closer to or further from the goal that I'm aiming for? And, just this concept of failing forward then is just really just a series of outcomes that give you data that help you make better decisions. So in a way, I heard this and I wish I could attribute the quote, but it's like there's winning, there's learning, and there's losing. Winning is great. Everybody wants to win. But if you don't win, as long as you can learn something, then you're not losing. But if you don't win and you don't learn anything, you're absolutely losing. So I just decided I'm just going to go through life being a winner or a learner and just avoid the losing part altogether if I could. But, I think the last thing I'll say on that is just that, the pain and suffering, like pain is inevitable, but suffering isn't, right? So it's just like in anything, we're going to experience setbacks. But, kind of through our attitude and the way that we look at it and the lens that we use, that could either be good for us and for us or happening to us, as a negative thing. So yeah, embrace the pain.
Yeah, no, I think that's the unlock. But there's a big mountain for most folks to climb on that. And I think this is probably where they look at owners, operators, entrepreneurs kind of weird. Like and they almost look at it as, had a gentleman over the last holiday we had here, and we were talking about this idea of building stuff and how it just seems so foreign and mystical, and there's a bit of a pedestal that folks get put on it. I think what they don't realize necessarily is that a guy like Travis would consider himself quite dirty and messy and in the trenches, and there isn't actually a lot of fancy that he's doing. It's a lot of just blocking and tackling and trying things out. What is the mystique about operating something that you wish people had better insight to?
Oh man, like just how messy it can be to do new things, right? I think that we fall into the temptation of the status quo of like whatever we were doing, let's keep doing that because change is painful. One kind of example of this is as an organization, our primary core service offering is that we do marketing services, primarily through building marketing websites and other marketing services. But we started offering strategy consulting. And usually this is just like a byproduct of the work that we do, for the deliverables. And so people don't scrutinize the strategic consulting because that just goes right into the deliverable of the work. So we started offering just the strategic consulting, and we just got punched in the face, and we failed miserably. And I'll say it, we even had a client where it just, because we have a guarantee in this, where it's like, hey, look, if you're unsatisfied at any time, we'll give you all your money back, which is a pretty strong guarantee. And this client was not satisfied, and we were like, all right, well, let's part ways. And so we were kind of licking our wounds and just understanding how do we improve on this. And so I shared a story with the team. I was recently reading a book, Gap in the Gain, by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, and he talks about this in this book. But there was this college, Principia College, right? And so they started a women's soccer team. They'd never had a soccer team before. And so they field this soccer team, and these girls are terrible. They're getting crushed And, every game it's worse. And so the coach comes up with a strategy and says, okay, when we're riding home on the bus, I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to moan and complain and whine about, how awful it was. And then we're going to stop. I'm going to stop a timer and we're going to talk for 10 minutes about all the positive things. And so we started applying that not only to games, but to practices where it's like, okay, you have a finite amount of time to complain, but then we're going to talk about what do we do right? And there was this interesting inflection point that happened halfway through the season. So they lost every single game they played up to a point, and at some point they won, and they kept winning. And in the Division II title that year, they ended up winning the Division II title championship game. They won every single game up to that inflection point thereafter. And it's just this idea of, intention, to what you're trying to do. So I think that maybe the one thing that people don't see is a lot of times it's just like anytime you see someone successful or winning awards or, achieving an exit of a high multiple, whatever it is, they don't see the incredible amount of pain and suffering and toil and strife that was kind of in the messy middle. They just kind of see the end result. And it's kind of like if you see someone who has a really great house or something like that, and sometimes maybe there would be judgment, but like who knows what was the work that went into that and how long that they were not where they were. So I mean, maybe that's not obvious, maybe that is obvious, but that's just something that stands out to me because we were going through it like in real time.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's obvious at all, Travis. I think there's so many folks. I mean, as small as nice car to must be nice to be the CEO and the owner and the founder of this thing. And I don't think folks understand what it took to get there. And I don't know that it's anything against them more than it's just really understanding that in itself of like enduring that pain and that suffering that comes along with it and learning from it. I think it's sometimes just maybe it's human nature. Like I've thought about this quite a bit too. Like maybe it's a security mechanism for us not to acknowledge that like that is what it takes to get to the thing. Mm-hmm. Oddly enough, I don't know about you, but it ends up becoming the thing after a while. Like the actually doing of the work becomes the thing. I think because I'm curious what you think about this. Like you reach this finish line and what do? We just like create the next one. And so at some point, it becomes almost a weird existence just to be, getting it to a goal from a business perspective is important. How important do you think it is to like define that what it is that you're doing in the moment is actually the thing?
Wow. Yeah. This is especially real for me now that I'm 21 years into owning and running a company, because.
Does that seem long or short, by the way?
That seems like a very long time for me. I'll talk with people and I'll be like, hey, 21, you're like, how old are you? You look pretty young to have run a company for that long. And I'm 46 and they're like, wow, okay. But yeah, most of my adult life that I've done this and this kind of goes into a little bit of a conversation we were having before we started, which was, kind of setting these goals and changing the goals. Well, there was an inflection point last year where I was having some major friction with my VP. I love my VP. So, like she ever watches this, you get all my love. But we were facing some major challenges and it kind of got me to the place of like, what do I want to do? And so you kind of have the state of like, this is kind of also the messy middle, which is you reach these places where you have to ask yourself like really hard questions. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I have the energy to keep going. So it's like not even what is the next goal going to be, but it's just like, do I even want to be doing this anymore? And I think a lot of people would relate. And so I took a 4-day solo retreat into the wilderness.
Did you really?
Yes.
Dude,
and I know you'd respect this.
Man.
Yeah, because this is your jam. And I went to, we have a client, HEB Foundation, and they have 1,500 acres on the Frio River.
Oh, that place is legit, man.
Or beautiful, beautiful place. And Marcus Goodyear, who is the director of communications there, marketing communications, set me up, in a great place. And it's down in the valley. And so when you drive down the hill into the valley, your phone stops working. So you have no access to any electronics. And so I'm there for 4 days. Just asking myself, and I'm just, a couple of observations that I just want to put out, and this maybe would be relevant to some folks, is that it was about on day 2 and it was just solitude, like, cause there was like, they usually have a lot of camps there, but during that time of the year, it was very quiet. Mm-hmm. And I was just by myself the entire time. I had no one to talk to, which was awesome. And just in nature, just hearing the beautiful sounds. And I just realized how incredibly burned out I was. And I think that when you're an owner or you're an operator, the buck stops with you. You have no alternative. You can't turn to anyone else to get the work done. There is always this like constant pressure. And so, I was like, wow, I am incredibly burned. Like owners experience burnout differently than employees do. It is just a different set of experiences, and you just basically suppress it, I think. And so I realized that I was burned out. I didn't even know. And then the second thing was I realized I didn't have any answer to the question, what should I do? So I was the question I was asking was, do I try to sell this company? Which 80% of people that try to sell their company don't. It's not like a given conclusion if you want to sell a company that you're going to be able to, or you're going to get the number you want. So do I sell? Do I not sell? Do I leave or do I not leave? Is like, do I fire this person or all of these options were on the table. Long story short, after the fourth day of asking myself this question with zero answers, I was like, I need more information. And so I got this voucher to get access to the internet to listen to an audiobook. And so I was like,
get a voucher to
it was like a little coupon that you could like connect to they did have Wi-Fi, but you can't get to it unless you have this code. And it was 1 hour. I got like 1 hour of internet. So I listened to this. It was called Your Next 5 Moves. And I've tend to found that a lot of my big revelations have come from mentors who are authors, not necessarily people I know, but authors. And one of the questions or kind of comments in the book was, great operators, lean into their challenges, and it's the wrong question to ask, what should I do? The right question is who should I be? And so I hope that this will resonate with people that are listening, but maybe you're at a place where you're kind of thinking about what you should do. And my humble recommendation is to forget that. It's be, do, have, right? So we want things, but we got to do things to get those things. But what's the most important is, who are you? Who do you want to be? You have to be before you can do. You have to do before you can have. So who do you want to be? So I was asking, what should I do? And the real question I should have been asking is, who do I want to be? And I'm telling you, within a split second, like seconds of asking that question, who should I be? I had the answer. And, so 3.5 days, nothing of what should I do? 1.5 seconds of like, who should I be? I want to be a great father and I want to be a great husband. And so that had no bearing on
the business,
but it was just crystal clarity for me, and I think that a lot of people would benefit from this exercise of not waiting until they have a major life crisis, but just asking themselves, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And, but the great thing was, it was now this foundation, this like very concrete foundation that I could start using. So then I started looking at my options. I created a pro-con list. And I said, which of these options will make the statement of being a great father and a great husband true? And it just started eliminating options, because I was like, well, if I sell this company and I go start a new company, well, first, if I sell it, that's going to be a challenge. But let's say I sell it and it does well, and I try to go start, how am I not going to, starting from scratch means I'm going to be working my butt off. I'm probably going to be putting in 80-hour weeks. I was like, if I'm working 60 to 80 hours, am I going to be a great husband and father? Probably not, because I'm going to be not present. So I was like, well, I just don't think that that's a viable option. And then so it just kind of, and then also it just kind of reminded me that like great operators have to lean into their part of the problem. So one of the biggest insights I got from that solo retreat was like, man, I'm probably more than 50% of the problem here. In all of the friction that was occurring that brought me to that place. And I was like, what can I learn from this by leaning back in and growing from that, if growth is one of my core values? And so, I came from that trip, and it was life-changing for me in a positive way, really reconciled, with my key leader, my number 2 at the company. And we've had a really great relationship thereafter. And it's just been really powerful for me. So I think there's just like those, before you can even set goals, my biggest recommendation would be to really just ask, like, who do I want to be? I did this exercise with my best friend, and one of the things that, like, everybody has a different answer to this, right? So his answer was like, he's like, one of my kind of foundational aspects of my life is I'm a connector. I love connecting people, which is totally different from me. I just want to do my thing. He's like, I want to be in the mix, and so everybody's going to have a different answer to that question, I think, and that will help propel whatever goals you're going to set for your business.
Real quick, how did you know you were burned out? Like, what was the epiphany during that time that made you go, I'm burned out? Like, what was the new feeling that you had
That is a great question. I don't think I thought about that. I just knew, like, it was innate. I think maybe it was just this feeling of weightlessness, of just being in an environment where any option was on the table. Because up until that point, I think burnout occurs when you have, pressure and stress. And stress is generally like there are things that are out of your control, right? Like, because like there's good stress and bad stress. Like you put goals on yourself that you can achieve. That's good stress. Bad stress is there's a situation that I don't have the control to affect, but it's still affecting me negatively. And so I think it's like, I was in a place where I was like, dude, I'm willing to do the most extreme decisions. Like, so everything was on the table. And so I think that by having everything on the table, it relieved some of the pressure of, cause like, well, if I just completely walk away from everything, that's an option. And now all of a sudden so it's like, I just realized how much pressure I was under.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to kind of free me up from that. It's like whatever decisions I'm making are going to be in alignment with who I am and who I want to be. And they're definitely not going to make me more stressed. And so I think that you kind of just seeing that delta, that difference between, what I was coming from and the desire to go to. So I think that was maybe, and then I think just being in nature, and just realizing, wow, like I need a digital detox, man. Like, I think that I've been talking about this a lot with friends. Like, I just think human beings have not evolved to handle the amount of information we process daily. If you think about where we were 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, or even 30 years ago to now, we haven't become fundamentally different. Yet the amount of information we process on a daily basis has exponentially increased.
Yeah.
And so I think that was also part of the burnout, was just that like very tactical, fundamental, like the amount of physical, like, digital information that's coming at me on a daily basis. So getting away from that was just, I think I would like to do this like once a quarter.
Yeah, no, you have to. I think there's so much in there that is the unlock. And I do think when it comes to information processing, one of the conversations I have often with leaders is like they're kind of like taking an inventory of what they have. Is do you start your day by deciding what you're not going to do? Because if you don't, you might consider that, because it's actually one of the things that you'll find very quickly you can get to a little more of not only your zone of genius, but what you'll find is that the things that you feel like you're neglecting are actually the things that your team will just start to be more empowered by if you just let them go, right?
So,
Whatever it might be.
Tell me about this, like, because I'm very intrigued. Is this like areas of the business? Is this specific projects? Is this like anything's on the table? Like, how do you go about that process? Like, how would I use that on a daily basis?
So in a very tactical way, open up your calendar for that day and decide which meeting that you're just going to cancel.
Wow.
And not necessarily cancel the meeting, one that you're just not going to attend, right? And you have to be calculated. It's not like to go out there and just completely put a bullet in that meeting. But what I am saying is look at your schedule and go, I will add zero value to that meeting, right? And it might make me feel good because it feels like the leader is there and everything else. But at the end of the day, all these people are going to talk about it. And Jim is going to come to me and tell me what happened and give me the one or two decision points I need to make. I don't need to be at that meeting. So that's like a very tactical way of looking at it. And you think about that, it starts to open up your free time. We can go way down the rabbit hole. Some folks immediately will tell me, yeah, but it just feels like it's my job to be there. I say, your job is the leader is the person who's supposed to have eyes on the horizon, making sure that you're continuing to head the way that you need to head.
Oh, that's so good.
And so if you're like in there rowing, it feels good. You're sweating with the team and all that stuff. But then everybody comes up from the bottom and they go, dude, we're off course.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you've been. Do you feel good that you sweated with the team for a little bit?
Oh man, I'm just thinking about like all the times that I've gone into things that I shouldn't be. I'm reading a book right now by Anthony DeMello called Awareness. It's really good. And one of the concepts he had in his book was like, one of the greatest tragedies is just saying yes to things that you don't want to do. Like, he's like, life is hard enough doing the stuff that you do want to do.
Yeah.
Like, and I wish I could remember the passage in this book, but he's such a great storyteller. But it genuinely inspired me in that moment. It was like some little like level was unlocked. Like I had recently kind of like unofficially offered to join the board of a nonprofit. And at the time I wasn't sure, if it would be the right decision to make. And through a series of circumstances, I realized that it probably wouldn't be. But then I was already kind of like far enough along where like it would feel a little awkward to pull out. And after reading that, I was just like, I'm going to be resolute, like on the things that I don't want to do that won't bring me joy, that would be a commitment, especially a long-term commitment, And so I fully resonate with that. Like, giving a leader full permission to be like, do I add value to this meeting? Do I add value to this project? Do I add value to this initiative? And just be like, I'm just going to take myself out of that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's a hard thing because there is this, like, we're all, especially as leaders, like you're you have this like innate kind of, and it's not a real guilt, but it's there. It's a real guilt, but it's one that shouldn't be there. You have this guilt that you're not like supporting your team. And I do think when I find folks have a hard time kind of crossing that chasm of like doing just even the one meeting that week, even the week, don't pick the day. If it's easier, just pick the meeting that week that you're not going to go to.
Yeah. I think like maybe that's the baby step, for someone, they're not quite ready to start dropping the axe on a daily basis. Like, let's just do it once a week. Right. Let's just look out over the horizon of the week and see, hey, what does not deserve, my time. And I mean, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, through no fault of their own, are generally over optimistic on what they can achieve.
Yeah.
And so they tend to overcommit. I had a good friend many years ago gave me a backhanded compliment. He said, Travis, sometimes you promise 150% and you deliver 120. and it was like, I don't know if I should be happy or sad that he said that, like I'm delivering 120, but I think that entrepreneurs tend to do that. And that is no different in their time, right?
Yeah.
They commit to that. I forgot, was it Bill Gates that said, a lot of people underestimate what they can get done in 10 years, but overestimate what they can get done in one, and it's like, I think we do that on any time scale, really.
Yeah. No, I think that as you're thinking about those things, and like, I think you're right. The baby step of a week is probably a good thing to do. The other framework that might be helpful is, do you have a favorite go-to kind of music?
I'm a big fan of like ambient, like, explosions in the sky.
Oh, really?
Kind of
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Give me like like an artist that you grew up with and you always enjoy listening to.
I was a big fan, especially in high school, like Dave Matthews, or Guster, some of these, kind of old school.
No, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Dave Matthews, he puts on a good show. The way I think about folks is like, as the leader of an organization, right? And take away the grandioseness of it, like not the fame, but just like the fact that people are showing up and there's a product out there because the leader of the, so if you found out as a listener, a loyal fan of Dave Matthews, that he stopped going to the logistics meetings that coordinated their tour buses, would you be upset about that if you got to still listen to him on the radio?
Not at all.
Go March. Of course not.
Not at all.
So it's the same thing with leadership. It's like, if you find the gifts that you are particularly great at, your team is actually not also going to be very upset. That as long as you're there in the moments and the times that you need to be there, they're okay also doing the other things. And it's some of those things that we get. I'm sure there's a moment Dave Matthews goes like, I should probably be on the tour bus meeting. Like, you don't need to be on the tour bus meeting.
No. And this is just in alignment with, I think, a lot of the thinking right now. I mean, you see Pat Lencioni's new book, The Areas of Genius, right? He's talking a lot about this. Dan Sullivan's 10X is easier than 2X. Just this concept of 10X thinking. 10X thinking in his framework is really, where is your 20%, right? Like, so it's your $1,000 an hour work, right? Like you take a business, finance, administration, sales, marketing, operations, like you cannot be, 100% an expert at each of these areas, right? I mean, most entrepreneurs just don't even have the integrator bone, right? They're not the detail-oriented person.
Yeah.
They cast the vision. They have the big relationships. They are the one that are charismatically evangelizing the mission and the vision and the values. And so, but then that person also has to run the books. That's not possible, I ran the books for my company for almost 15 years. And I mean, the second I handed that off, like I never looked back. I did not be like, I kind of missed. No. Like for the rest of my life, I will never touch that, hopefully. But I think that's a fantastic approach. And if you get a chance, I don't know if you've read Buy Back Your Time by Dean Martell.
I have not read it yet.
Oh my gosh. So this is the same concept, right?
Yeah.
So he has a laddering approach, right? So it's like it inspired me deeply. So in fact, as soon as I got done reading that book, I hired my first executive assistant. Like she actually helped, I think, schedule this
whole thing. Yeah.
So right. He's like, if you're an entrepreneur and you don't have an executive assistant, you're costing your company money. So his whole theory is, before you do anything else, in terms of like where you review your time, he has a whole quadrant process for how you evaluate your time and prioritize what you should be doing and not should be doing in your high value activities. So it's a really cool process. But he's like, get get someone to take over your calendar and your inbox. And so I read this, and I had read that in sequence with 10X, so this concept of areas of genius. And it was like a deer in the headlights moment for me. I was like, I spend 10 hours a week just scheduling meetings. And I don't think I'm different than any other entrepreneur.
No, I think you're right.
So I hired an EA for the first time in my life, and I'm on a 90-day trial to kind of see, is this going to benefit my life? And it's interesting. It's mixed for me, mixed results, where, the benefit of this has to overcome the complexity of a whole nother human being in my life, that has their own inclinations and availability and, skill sets, with what is the productive gain that I've gotten out of this. And so it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me, but I think that I'm not going to give up on trying. But he talks about that. So he's like, okay, the first step is you gotta kind of get out of the calendar to the inbox, and then it's the administration. He talks about sales. He talks about sales and marketing. He actually recommends sales be like the last role you give out. Which for me as a person, a lot of owners of especially in our space, sales is a big component of what I do. But his theory is that's the hardest job to replace. And so you kind of ladder your way up. And obviously having marketing where you have a consistent marketing machine that's generating, visibility and opportunity, that's important if you can offload that. And then eventually leadership, that's the last ladder. That's the part of the ladder where, you have created a leadership team. And we've talked a lot about EOS, but EOS is the same framework, right? You create a structure and accountability chart. And I mean, the same thing with Michael Gerber, he talks about this, you create an organizational chart, you put your name in all the slots, and you just start removing yourself from the area that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those unlocks that if you give it enough time, it's probably like a great physical regimen or some craft you're pursuing. It kind of sucks for a little while. Hey, this thing is supposed to help me get better. I'm sure just like with your EA, you're like, hey, why? This in some ways feels like I've got more time, more anxiety because I'm wondering if that email got sent right. I would never have said it that way. But I imagine at some point as that calibration happens, it gets better. I want to go back real quick. It just got stuck in my brain, man, so you got to help me out here. You were talking about the B part at that, who would I want to be? And one thing I can't get out of my head after you said that was good father, good husband, right? Great father, great husband, engaged father, engaged husband, just kind of.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile, if that becomes your bass drum, how do you reconcile that with not betraying the entire livelihood of all these people who work with and for you there at the company and all the customers and all that stuff? Do you see that as being at odds with each other, or do you see that your B actually being the thing that enables that to be better?
I think it's got to be integrated. Integrity is wholeness, right? And Brene Brown talks a lot about wholehearted living, and her whole shame and research and worthiness and all the stuff that she does. But I think wholehearted would be, you have to integrate your life. There's a long time where I looked at my personal life and my professional life as a duality. In fact, I even looked at how I serve and how I give as, okay, well, I work over here to make money, and then I serve over here to give and kind of use my life to benefit others. And it took me about 10 years in my professional career before I realized that those should be one and the same. And it was, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, that whole talk. So just kind of going to now, absolutely. I think that, in fact, I would almost postulate that, leading and modeling a role of being a great father and a great husband is a part of who I am as a person. Because think about your employees. So if you're a leader at a company or you're an owner or both, and then you have employees, wouldn't you want them to have wholehearted, integrated lives? What would you want them to just show up at work as a robot doing the work? Maybe they're really good at doing the work, but then at the detriment of their personal be? What maybe this person wants to be a professional violin player or have a side job or whatever they want to do. It's wouldn't you rather have people that are coming to work as a whole person, and that I would hope as a leader, want them to be a whole person living their life to the best and achieving their highest actualization of their. And so I think that to model that is important, right? So I think that for me, it absolutely has to be integrated, and they have to support each other because it's not sustainable otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing, right? Let's say I get clear about my why or my B statements, which for me, one of my B statements, I actually write these down every day and have for, 7 years, some of my most primary, one of my B statements is I want to be the most encouraging person that I can be. And, another is I want to be in the best health of my life, because I feel like health is a force multiplier. Another B statement for me is that in addition to being a great father and a great husband, I want to be a visionary leader and a highly successful entrepreneur. So these things, I want these things to be true. And it's like, if they're not true, then I feel like I'm like driving the plane into the ground or something like that. Like at some point it's going to crash. And who does that help? Right. In fact, these B statements, I've written down for so many years, and then they change and
But every morning you hash them out?
I have stacks and stacks. This was this morning.
Oh, you have good handwriting too.
I'm thankful for daily. I call it daily inspo, which I used to call it affirmations, but right here, I'm a great husband and father. Today I didn't write down my goals because I was in a hurry coming to here, but write down my goals every day too. But.
It's awesome.
But these have an impact. I mean, I can't tell you how many times. So, think about this, 80% of the year. So hundreds and hundreds of times a year for going on a decade now, or almost a decade. And I'll write down, I'm the most encouraging person I can be. And I'll stop and I'll go text my best friend and say, man, I love you. You're a great friend. Or my wife or something. I don't do that every day, but like, it's hard not to want to go do something like that when you write down a statement like this. Or the other thing that happens is, I had injured my shoulder. I was very unhealthy because I kind of got discouraged. I went through physical therapy for 12 weeks twice, and I couldn't fix. It was an impingement, and I couldn't do all of the normal stuff that I would do. And so I got real discouraged, and I stopped exercise for almost an entire year. And so I was very out of shape, the most out of shape I'd been. And I was writing down every day during that process. I'm the healthiest. I'm in the best shape of my life. Or so it was like this dissonance, like this massive dissonance. But I think that writing it down it was almost like it kept that idea alive so that at some point I would overcome and get back to that place. And now I can genuinely say this year, my best friend and I have been doing these health challenges all year, and I'm in the best shape I've been in my life. Or at least, since I was like running track in college, maybe I don't know if I'm better shape than that. But another one too, like writing down, I'm a visionary leader and highly successful entrepreneur. I remember one year I was watching profitability of the company. It was going down. We had had a really great year. We actually doubled the number of employees of the company. At the time we were small, it was about 15 folks. We had about 6 employees. We hired like 6 or 7 more. So it's like any organization, doubling your employees, whether it's 20, 50 or 100 is a big meaningful change. Yeah. Meaningful change. And and just for a young leader, younger leader. But profitability, I was just consistently going down. And we were also experiencing the struggles of, how do you maintain a culture when you have 50% of the people are brand new and they haven't been like slowly indoctrinated into the values and then you have, this mix of, hiring is never 100%, right? It might be 50-50 half the time. And, you get it right. Sometimes you don't. And so then here I am writing down, I'm the most highly, I'm a visionary leader and a highly successful entrepreneur. And I'm watching things and that's where you just kind of say, well, if I am this, then what am I going to do about this? Yeah. And so this B statement literally inspired me. One day I just stopped and said, okay, we got to make bold decisions. And we made some really big changes. We had to let go of some people, which was very difficult. We had to ask some people that we had elevated up out of very difficult positions to come back into those positions. And it was just a sequence of bold decisions that really got us back on track. And I honestly attribute it to writing down, if I'm a highly successful entrepreneur, then I got to make decisions that highly successful entrepreneurs make, and I got to put myself in positions to learn from other highly successful entrepreneurs so that I continue to grow. So that's just I don't know, that was a side story or not.
No, great story.
But it relates to the B statements,
Yeah, it's that accountability. I see what you mean, though. It's kind of the grounding rod that gets you back to being back on course. I think that's not something that you think about. And when I think about it, I was taking a life inventory here just recently, just kind of about all the cool things and all the big things and all the busy things and all the things that are happening. What's interesting is the human mind and heart is so incredible. And at the same time, we also don't recognize, just like the average person, even a non-entrepreneur, how many things they are juggling all at once and just putting in. I kind of look at it, I tell my wife, I call it you can call it social credits or energy credits or whatever. But if you're like dishing out these credits to all the little things that you're doing and working on, it's amazing how some people are still walking every single day, like keeping these things moving. And I think showing those statements there remind me how important it is to have these grounding rods that like immediately make it clear on where you're pushing these credits.
Yeah.
Right. And like, what's the tug thing that's going to like keep you moving the way that you need to go? It's like, it's fascinating. And I think it's one that it probably isn't an easy thing to kind of move through. I mean, they're almost like those statements. Have they been the same for 10 years too? Or they've evolved?
They've evolved, but they change order. They evolve.
Okay.
You know, I add, remove. Sometimes I simplify, but that basic set has been going for about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. But you know, it's like, I love what you said about energy. I was at the CEO Summit for Conscious Capitalism. So Conscious Capitalism is a great organization. They had the big summit. There's about 250 leaders came in, and I'm racking my brain on the speaker. He's an author of the book, but I haven't read the book yet. But he talked about, you know, just was it the second law of thermodynamics? You know, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So when you're giving out energy, you're losing. It's going somewhere. You don't have like an infinite amount of energy. So you're absolutely right. It's just like we have a finite amount of energy, and it's going places. You know, and where are you putting it? And I do think that the course correction. I can't remember the book I read, but it was just this idea. It's like when if you're sailing a boat across the Atlantic, you're never on a perfect straight line, right? You're always kind of like course correcting back, you know? And so I think that it's just like, to me, this is a course correction. And, you know, and there are days when I'm having a pity party, you know, like because things—
You're having your 5 minutes.
Yeah, I had a failure, you know, I lost a sale, you know, a big decision didn't go my way. And here I am writing down, you know, I'm the most encouraging person that I can be. Well, I don't feel very encouraging at that moment, you know? But I think that it's just a reality of like, this is the mental picture of who I want to be, you know, and I think that's important. And I think it's almost from the standpoint, there's a long time where I thought about this as actually inspiration from Michael Gerber, who talks about your primary aim in life. And that was a huge inspiration for me. So these statements were actually a distillation of a list I created when I read that book back when I first started my company. In fact, if you go Google, I don't know if anyone's like watching this on their computer, but whenever this goes out, but if you go Google, what is my primary aim in life? My humble article was #1 for like 10 years.
Oh, really?
You know, for primary aim in life, my primary aim in life, what is my primary aim in life? Because I read that book, Michael Gerber's E-Myth, and then I wrote down this list of 10 things that like, these are my primary aims in life. It was 10 things, and the top 5 is kind of what eventually made it into this B statements. So that's kind of the backstory behind it.
No, that's cool, man. Well, tell me about this. The personal value statements and what kind of the inspiration and the grounding in the B statements. I know how important they are personally. When you think about values in a company, right? Or when you think about, and talking to you before, I know what you're going to say. You don't make values, right?
This is a whole topic.
This is an old topic, but I love it, man. It's an old topic that's always relevant. It's a classic.
Always relevant, yeah.
What do they call it? A classic.
Yeah.
First, what would you tell folks the mystique or the misunderstanding about values? Kind of similar to like the life of an operator and an owner. I'll start with saying that I believe most folks that I talk to think that values are a nice to have, right? And maybe when we grow or maybe we go a little further along, maybe when we start making some cash, we can get that ping pong table in and we can kind of get some cool little cards made.
Yeah, put a poster on the wall.
Put a poster on the wall, and then we get some values, and then we can talk about them. Just like if you had to quickly course correct that statement, what would you say about values and their importance or the lack thereof?
I would be concise. Yeah, because this is like, do you have 90 minutes? You know? But the absolute first thing is that, you know, I do think that your personality and your passion as an operator or potential operator coming in, you know, plays into this. But yeah, I mean, the very first thing is you don't create value. So if you're coming in as an operator saying you're going to take over a business and say, okay, I'm going to install this set of core values, that's just not how you do it. You will fail, you know. And Pat Lencioni talks a lot about this. There's all these other types of values that aren't core values. There's aspirational values. So I would say if you're coming in as an operator and you say, okay, here's the set of values that I'm going to install, those are aspirations. Those aren't core values. And then secondly, there are hidden values. There are things that exist in the organization that probably aren't that great. Like it might be, wow, this organization only hires young people. this is a value that they've put on, from a hiring perspective of youth versus, being less discriminatory or whatever. So you have aspirational values, you have hidden values, and then you have table stakes values, right? So if table stakes are like, if you're an organization that serves people and you come in and say, okay, I'm going to install this core value of customer service. Well, so what? Right?
Welcome to business, bro.
Yeah. That's 101 for like staying in business, so you cannot use that as a core value unless like someone left their coat and you'll drive 100 miles in the rain, to give it back to them for free. Then, maybe you can say you have customer service as a value. So, but then other than that, I think that those are probably the fundamentals of like the mistakes that people make. And as this kind of starts to kind of come into our culture, I would say values almost usurps purpose in a way because it is the lens that you look through. I mean, purpose is the foundation. And I think the other thing maybe, and I don't know, this is a segue, but I think a lot of people interchange purpose, vision, and mission, as being the same thing, but they're all very different, right? Purpose is the foundation that you spring from of why you exist. Like this is why our organization exists. In an aspect, there is a mission to that, but mission is actually how you enact and what you go do from the purpose, and it's the day to day, right? And then vision is, okay, someday in the future, from our purpose through our mission, the vision will become a reality. And so that is like the journey that you're on. So purpose is the foundation, mission is the journey that you're on, and vision is the destination that you arrive at. And values are the course correctors all along that way, and helping you make decisions, helping you hire or fire, helping you reward and recognize, helping you decide new directions or take away old directions. The values are going to be the things that you use to determine a decision. So I don't know if that helps, but
helps a ton. Give me an example of, like, what's a value y'all have that in a decision you just maybe recently had to make, and you used the value to determine how to make that
I have
decision?
one that happened this morning.
Okay. Was it to show up here or not?
Yeah.
I'm going to go ghost Joseph.
Well, so we have a new client. We really like them. The Land Institute. They're an amazing organization. They're focusing on just perennial agriculture and just how to use how to change the way the world grows food so that it's sustainable, because right now it is very unsustainable. Great organization. They have a leadership conference they're trying to raise $250 million, so $250 million in the next probably like 5 to 10 years. And so we're doing a strategy engagement with them, that's focused on digital. It's going really well. But they mentioned in passing that they have a leadership conference happening in February. They said, hey, maybe you could come. And I said, I would love to go. So a way that we use values was we have our cornerstone value, our primary value. And this primary value was not created. We looked at our company and we said, who are the people that we love and that have been with us and that are in leadership, that are kicking butt? And what do they look like? How do they talk? How do they act? And building meaningful relationships was the most important value that connected with the most people at our company and as a core value. And so I came to the team and said, I'd really like to send the team to this leadership conference. And it has nothing to do with the work. It's just to build relationships. It's going to cost us a decent amount of money to fly all these people from different places. And in our leadership meeting, we said, well, I just think we should do it because we have our number one core value is building meaningful relationships. And this is going to allow us to build meaningful relationships, with this client. And so it's just a no-brainer, even though it will take away profit from the company to send all these people there. And, in a corollary or, in another example, same thing, we were deciding each year we kind of bring everyone in for an annual team meeting and we decide who we're going to bring in. Same thing, right? It's like, this is a significant cost. I mean, it could be $20,000 or $30,000 to kind of fly all these people in to pay for all of the amenities and things, lodging, and depending on the financials for the year or whatever. And we just always decide, well, it doesn't matter how well we've done this year. This is a priority, and we know that it's going to make our team grow in relationship, and so we're going to do it. So that would be an example of like a clear value aligning with a clear decision.
Yeah. So it sounds like that it's important to make sure that you identify those core values correctly.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you'd go astray and make a bunch of decisions and go, well, this is my values. And you go, yeah, but is it? I know there's an entire process, and heck, I know you teach a masterclass on this, but when you think about maybe just some fundamentals, when folks are like sitting where they're at right now trying to decide, okay, what are my core values?
That's an interesting concept. I thought about this a lot. Like, well, what if you are just starting your company? What if you're a solo entrepreneur by yourself? And, there is always going to be an aspirational aspect to this. I am a passionate values enthusiast. Like I've read all the books about it. I've just thought about this 5 ways from Sunday. And it's funny because I probably had, 5 different versions of values of Glide over 20 years before we codified the version we had, because I was doing it by myself. And so I think that it is difficult when you're by yourself, because it's a little bit of it is like, well, what do I care about most? And so I think that the process that I would take if I was by myself or if I had a small team was to meet together to really define and look at the people and just describe these people. So if it's a small team, you can do this. In fact, when we codified our values, which have become the values we've been using for years, we only had 4 people on our leadership team. So it was a small leadership team. But even with 4 people, imagine 4 people describing each of those people, with 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 words each. You're still going to get enough data points to kind of like triangulate like who we are as an organization and what we believe. So I think the process would definitely be different if you're by yourself. I think that if I was by myself, I would be reticent to not consider like the people I'm serving. Like what are the need in the marketplace? Because if I'm just kind of operating in a vacuum of like, okay, this is what I think is important, maybe that will or will not resonate, with the target market. But I mean, at the end of the day, you are who you are, and I think that's the concept of uncovering versus creating, is that you just have to acknowledge, like maybe you're like, I'm a no bullshit person, and I'm always going to tell you 100% what I'm thinking, even if you don't like it, so that would be a value, right? Like, so you're bringing your personality into the fray. But what I'm suggesting is that over time, you might find that if you're just using your values alone and you're not incorporating others, that might not resonate over the long term. It might not be scalable as you grow. And so I think one example for me would be, I used to have a value of professionalism as like perfection, like excellence, and like had to be perfect. But I think that was replaced with better every day, which is like, I don't actually want it to be perfect, because like perfection is the death of everything. Like, so like I would rather iterate to perfection, and so, to me, that is a much better value. And it's just an example of adaptability. So you got to start somewhere, but just be ready to be able to change it, over time. And I would say not change it, like you don't want to be changing core values, but you want to be incorporating more people over time and just reevaluating. So a good example, and I'll end with this, is a couple of years ago, we realized one of our core values was burning people out. So another example of values too is they're not good or bad, they just are. And so you could have a value of open-mindedness, but that means you also have to be open-minded to negative things, which, maybe it would not be a good thing. So one of our values, deliver faithfully, was burning people out. So like people are like, okay, well, I have to deliver faithfully, even if I'm sick, even if my mom's in the hospital, I'm going to work until whatever hour of the night, I'm going to put in too many hours. And so we just kind of looked at this core value, especially during the pandemic and this poly crisis we're in, where there's like, major crises happening all over the place. And I think we just identified, wow, we care a lot about work-life balance. We care a lot about taking care of our people. We have all kinds of policies like the 4-day work week, unlimited time off, sending people away, paying, like we did this crazy thing where we piloted deleting every email that comes into a person's inbox when they're on a vacation for more than 10 days.
Oh, really? And, like if you leave for 10 days, when you come back, you're at 0.
Yeah, because if you do the research, a lot of people don't take vacations because they're too stressed out about the work they're going to get when they get back. And so we created an entire policy where we have a coverage team. So everyone on that team divvies out the work that needs to be done while that person's gone. So when they get back, it's an empty slate and they can start fresh. That's a pretty cool idea, and I think that, more people should be doing this. So not only is it in your inbox, but it's also like the task list, right? So we just looked at this and we said, wow, we care a lot. And then we realized that we had a lot of people that love to travel. And so I proposed that we had a new core value, and it was to offset deliver faithfully. We called it enjoy the journey. And so when I say like be adaptable to core values, I'm not saying like you should like stop thinking something's important. I'm thinking you just acknowledge what is happening in our organization in the lens upon which we make decisions. And one of those lenses was we want to enjoy the journey of life. We want to work to live and not live to work. We've created all of these structures to protect people that are high performers we don't need to worry about them working hard. We need to worry about them getting burned out. And so this core value of enjoy the journey just became clear and evident to us. And we named it and we celebrated it. And now it's one of our new value. We have 5 now instead of 4.
It's kind of like the ability for them to kind of work at odds with each other keeps things
Yin and yang.
perfectly in balance, right?
Yeah.
Like you have that healthy tension and it kind of makes you, it's life. It makes you arrive at the right spot.
Absolutely. And the same thing with better every day and love what you do, which is 2 of our other values. Those are actually complementary and 2 sides of the same coin. In my opinion, it starts with loving what you do, but it is impossible to not get better at something.
If you love what you do.
If you love what you do, you will always get better because you will just do it by default. If you're a skateboarder and you love to skateboard, eventually you're going to be doing tricks that other people can't do.
Yeah.
Right. So, that is an interesting pair that we created. So anyway, yeah, hopefully some of that, there's some nuggets in there for core values. And I'll even throw this out too. If anyone is listening to this, they can get through, get my contact information. Maybe we can post it or whatever.
Sure.
But I will talk your ear off about, how to find these, or codify them better or name them or you name it.
I have a feeling we're probably going to do some kind of, this is not the last time we're going to go dive into the brain of Travis McAshan and start thinking about how it is that we can help folks dive through values. You and I have done some deeper type stuff on this thing, and I think you're such a great resource for it, but I think you're also very approachable in the way that you shepherd that stuff along.
Oh man. And I think that the twinkle I've seen, so I've done a little bit of business consulting on the side just for fun, honestly. And I was able to uncover core values for a couple different organizations. And just watching them light up when you name a value that is clear that we've uncovered this and we've seen it in the people and we've taken all of these words and they're all in this bucket. And now we got to give it a name that's exciting and compelling. And watching we had this one client, like, it was serve with heart was one of those. It was grind to greatness, So for this client, these were a moniker for a very deep feeling where it's just like, yes, you've hit the nail. We cannot improve that. It doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
Where they're jumping up and down, because you've just put a face to something that they always knew, but they couldn't figure out how to articulate. And so, yeah, would love to be able to help with that.
No, you certainly will, man. There's no doubt. Travis, man, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. I am certain this won't be the last time, man. But thanks for all you do, man. Thanks for who you are. And I am sure that the folks tuning into this there's no doubt will be inspired, man. So
awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Really appreciate it. Super honored to be here. And look forward to the next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the American Operator Podcast, where we celebrate the backbone of America, small business owners and operators like you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss out on more of these stories and insights from people who keep our community strong. Until next time, keep building, keep operating, and keep America moving forward.